Yo, 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 yo. Guys, I didn't want to make this video. It was not something I was excited about, but I decided today that I should make this video, and I have some strong takes. You already seen what this video is about based on the title, but I do have some strong takes, and hopefully these things will be interesting to you. This is one of the biggest pieces of news in the history of the hobby. I'm going to take on a lot here in the next few minutes, but like I said, I didn't want to make this. I didn't really care the way that a lot of people do, but I've gotten so many messages that are like, what do you think about this aspect? Or do you think that it's going to cause this? Like, or should I crack my cards out of Beckett slabs and send them to PSA? Or should I, like, is Beckett going to continue? What's going to happen if PSA doesn't have Beckett to compete with them? All these types of questions. And I'm like, okay, I'll just make a video. So with all that said, I've got this episode is going to be divided into 4 parts. The first is how significant this is and how I feel about it. We'll talk about Beckett and Beckett's history and some of those things. For those of you who haven't listened to me, I've been in the hobby for 30-something years, made it sort of, it's my career, it's a lot of things. And so I obviously have strong feelings. I subscribed to Beckett magazine back when I was like 10 years old. Before that, actually, 6 years old. Before that, actually. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So that's the first part. How significant is it? How do I feel about it? What am I going to do with my cards, right? Like, how does this influence Beckett's slabs? 3, why did PSA do this? What do I think about why PSA might have done this? And then number 4, what's going to happen now? So let's start with number 1. I think I would say 2 sort of conflicting things at the same time. I would say this is one of the biggest pieces of the news in some ways in the history of the hobby, and I just don't care at all, like in any way. It doesn't impact anything that I do or how I think about anything. That's just being really true. Beckett is one of the greatest brands in the history of sports cards. It is. Beckett is one of the greatest brands in the history of sports cards. What brands are bigger than Beckett? Like historically speaking, through all time, go back to the 70s or something. What brands historically are bigger than Beckett? There's Topps. There's Upper Deck. That might be the end of the list. As far as branding goes, Beckett is a name that means so much. When I think about who I've met in the history of the hobby that I think of, that is the GOAT. It is James Beckett. It is Dr. Beckett. Dr. Beckett is the greatest of all in the history of our hobby. The reverence that I have for him and what he accomplished knows no bounds. And the fact, like Beckett, that's the name. That's where it comes from. So the fact that name is basically going to go away, possibly. We'll talk about that in a second too, is really significant. But how does it impact me? Like, I stopped sending stuff to Beckett a long time ago. And frankly, almost all of you did too. So what was Beckett around for? Well, Beckett's website and the data that is provided there is incredibly valuable. The set history is incredibly valuable. The pop counts are important. Those are the things that are really important. The magazines that I have, the whole thing full of here, it's got like years and years worth of magazines, that all still exists. That name will still continue forward. So, but like, it doesn't impact it going away. I don't think is going to impact those things. Is PSA going to kill off the data that exists historically from Beckett? I would be shocked if they do. Why would they do that? If they did that, that would be terrible. It would be awful. If the old school Beckett set information from that, historically is available suddenly went away, that would be bad. But assuming that doesn't happen, it doesn't really have a whole lot of impact. What am I going to do with my cards? So I think a lot of you maybe know I've got a lot of Beckett slabs. Let's see, what do I have here on my desk right now? I've got this Kevin Garnett card right here, 2012 gold prism, the number 5 of 10. It's Kevin Garnett's jersey number. I have one more. I've got a Rudy Gobert's exquisite 1-of-1 rookie card. Got a few other cards. These are just other cards that I've had out for different purposes. But I don't have anything here that's like crazy. I have some crazy stuff in Beckett slabs. I have the Kobe Bryant 1-of-10 gold prism from 2012. I have the PMG of Michael Jordan, the PMG Championship. It's a BGS 9. I've got his gold fusion in a BGS 9. This is a lot of value worth of Beckett slabs. And over the years, I've talked about this several times. I've sort of come to realize that getting those cards graded with Beckett was one of the big mistakes I ever made. I couldn't have known how things were going to change. I couldn't have known that PSA would be taken over by a group that would be as forward thinking as they have been, that they would change our perception so significantly based on how we think about how they actually grade. I couldn't have foreseen that Beckett would grade some fakes and aftermarket cards or aftermarket serial number cards, backdoor cards, and not take accountability for that. I didn't understand that the guarantee program that PSA had over the years would just squash Beckett, and the people would not think of it the same way. And I couldn't have known that Beckett would, over the course of years, and I say this with humility and kindness, I couldn't have understand that Beckett would not move forward in a way that was like anywhere close to what PSA has done. They haven't at all. And they've been so left behind that for many of us, there's no reason to ever consider grading with them. There was a time where you'd look at these slabs and you'd say, those are the best slabs because they're thick. They're stronger. They are stronger in some ways. If you were going to, put a bunch of weight on it and hope that, it wasn't going to be crushed or cracked or broken in half, of course you'd take Beckett way over PSA. Historically, there's no question about that. But as time's gone by, we've cared far more, not about the strength of the slab like this, but the strength of the surface of the slab, because we care so much about being able to take good images. We've cared so much more about how you can see the card in the case. Beckett has never done a great job of that. Beckett's been the worst at that. What Beckett has had as a competitive advantage is if I put this thing in the mail, it's unlikely to break in half as much as like PSA. Beckett had the subgrades, and people love the subgrades. That goes away, right? PSA is never going to have that. I'd be shocked if they ever consider doing anything like that. So what am I going to do with my cards? Sorry, it's easy for me to get sidetracked. What am I going to do with my cards? Should I crack them out? I should have done it years ago. But here's what's happened with PSA. And this is the real truth from a guy who has a lot of my worth in these cards, right? The real truth is PSA's grading scale has not changed significantly, but the way that PSA has implemented it on the sort of cards that I've collected has changed massively. It has. So a card that used to be a PSA 9 is now PSA 7. And Beckett has now sort of followed suit in that way, so that cards that they used to grade 9s are graded 7s too. So now, more than ever, what really matters is when you got your card graded. I'll give you an example. My Jordan PMG Championship. Got that card graded in like 2016. It came back a BGS 9. I was hoping it would be a BGS 9.5. It was BGS 9. And I was bummed out about that. But it's like, oh, okay, it's still one of the best ones in existence. That's fine. If I would have graded it with PSA at that time, I think there's a very good chance it would have been a PSA 9. Today, it might be a 7. Maybe a 7.5. Maybe if I crack it out of the holder and send it in raw, there's a chance it could get an 8. But because of how PSA grades now, which is different than how PSA used to grade, my card is not going to get the grade that it used to get. And the reason that I bring that up is that if I want to get my cards graded by PSA, I have to spend a crap ton of money to grade them. There's the risk in sending them in. There's the crazy, insane insurance fees that I have to pay. You know what that would cost me to grade that Jordan card? It's probably like $10,000 to $15,000 at this point to grade a card. I didn't pay that for the card. I paid $5,000 for it in 2015. I want to pay 3 times as much for it to grade it now. It's insane. Now, if I was going to sell it, would it make sense? Yeah, sure it would. But am I going to sell it? No, probably not. And am I going to sell my 2012 Gold Kobe? No, probably not. And so am I going to spend the thousands and thousands of dollars to grade them? Maybe not. Maybe I will at some point. Maybe I'll just say, you know what? These grading fees are just always going up. And because they're always going up, because again, they go up as the values of cards go up. And I do believe the value of cards will continue to increase. And so and I could be wrong about that, but that's generally what I believe. So if that keeps happening, then yes, the price of grading will continue to go up. So may I at some point sort of bite the bullet and send stuff into PSA? I might, but do I want to? No. Do I really care? No. It's just plastic. It's not the card. And when people say, when my friend Tristan Lee once said, buy the card, not the grade, it spoke to me, and it still does. I don't care about the holder nearly as much as the rest of the hobby does. And people will say, well, I don't care about the slab either. I really care about the card, but I see in people's decision making all the time. It's just not true. People all the time will say that, and then they will pay for the grade. They will. They'll pay for the plastic. But what I know now more than ever is, and this is related to what's happening here, what I know now more than ever is that when a card was graded is paramount, right? When it was originally graded, not when it was reholdered, but when it was originally graded, how the grading scale was being applied at that time is what matters. And so, am I going to change anything today? No, I'm going to probably keep all my stuff in Beckett slabs. It's already in Beckett slabs. But I started switching most of it to PSA as far as grading things new years ago. And that was, by that point, it was totally clear. I hung on as long as I could. And now I just wish I could go back in time and just grade it all with PSA, all the high end stuff with PSA to begin with. PSA does not have the best slab. I've talked about this for years. CGC has the best slab. It's far better. It's still better. PSA's is better than it used to be, but CGC slab is the best. It's clearer. I personally think the flip looks good. I know other people will say, it doesn't look good, but the cases are so much clearer. What CGC does not have is that same guarantee where, PSA is saying that they're willing to pay out hundreds of thousands of dollars on cards. That insurance means a lot to people. Okay. So now let's go back here real quick to Beckett, because I want to hit this. I want to basically eulogize Beckett a little bit. So when I was growing up, I'm a child of the early 80s. When I was growing up, Beckett was it became a word that you thought of that represented a whole media company, right? It was just pass me the Beckett, which meant show me. And I've got one sitting here on my desk right now. This Beckett, ironically, with Sean Kemp on the front of it, has Kobe Bryant's autograph there on the back. You can see it right there, along with Eddie Johnson and Nick Van Exel. I met these guys in the 1997 playoffs over at Marriott, the Marriott here in Salt Lake City. And anyway, I was literally looking at this Beckett earlier today, looking something up. I digress. But when I was a kid, I would say, I'd be in the card shop and I'd be like, pass the Beckett. That's what that meant. And I'd look up a card and I'd look up the high book and the low book, and I'd figure out what I was willing to pay for it based on that. And that price guide changed the world. It also changed the world in that the articles that are contained therein are incredibly important for our history. We can look back and we can say, oh, that's how we felt, or oh, that's where that comes from, or oh, that's what that print run is. There's still so much data in these magazines. It's critically important. And so, Beckett was that. And then during the 1990s, Beckett saw PSA grading cards, and they said, this is something that we should do. And they took what PSA was doing and they tried to make it even better, right? They made the holders thicker, which again, those holders today we think of as not as nice because they scratch easily, but they were so much thicker and stronger. They had the subgrades, and the subgrades mattered. We cared about that. And Beckett cards for a long time sold for more than PSA cards. People forget that. It's true. For a long time, you'd rather have a Beckett 9.5 Jordan than a PSA 10 Jordan. For a long time, the most valuable card or most expensive card they had ever sold was a BGS 9.5 Jordan Fleer. It was the first one that had graded, which was a long time after Beckett started grading cards. The first 9.5 was graded and sold. It sold for $77,000. And for years, that was the record, the most expensive basketball card, which is crazy to think about now. But at the time, that was the case. And then Beckett, sort of just did its thing and existed like it was for years. And then PSA, going back really to the time that Nat acquired the company, and then even before that, really just became the company that people wanted for the ultra high-end stuff. And Beckett never basically came to the table and said, okay, we're going to fix what we need to. We're going to compete with PSA. They just never did. And we wanted them to, but everything they did was wrong. The best thing that I saw Beckett do over the course of the last few years was the ad that they came up with, the no upcharge ad that was a couple of months ago. And that was the first moment in years where I looked at the landscape and I said, maybe Beckett will do something here. Because it just felt like they were stuck in the mud for years, just doing their thing, sort of saying, oh, here we're going along in an industry that it has exploded Beckett has stayed the same size, and in a lot of cases has shrunk. Staying the same size and shrinking in an industry that is exploding is just, I mean, that basically tells you what you need to know. And so Beckett has died a long death, long, slow death. Their leadership, I don't know them. And I'm not saying I know, like I've known several people who've worked there who I've liked and gotten along with, and not only gotten along with, but like I felt like they're good people doing good things. But their leadership has never done anything that made me go, you know what? That's it. They got it. They're going to go compete. They just haven't been competitive. And that's not me trying to be rude. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm trying to be kind. They've never done it. And so long, slow death for Beckett. And it's sad to see. Okay. Why do I think PSA did this? Okay. Well, let me ask you this question. Why does any company eliminate a competitor by buying them? Okay. They do it to eliminate competition. And you might say, well, they weren't even competition. They were only grading a small percentage as much as PSA. The question isn't how competitive are they now? The question is what could they have taken from them in the long term? Is there anything that they could have done to sort of become more competitive? And does PSA have certain initiatives and things that they're planning on where Beckett would have potentially been problematic to that? Could Beckett have competed on price like we saw SGC do? Could Beckett have provided some alternative to PSA that some people might have considered? And all the answers to those questions sort of yield you to go, okay, I see how in the long term Beckett could have done something. Maybe PSA happened to see the Beckett leadership sort of changing in a way where it potentially could have been problematic. But what's certain is that few percent that Beckett had of the market share now belongs to PSA, because Beckett is under the PSA umbrella. And now PSA doesn't have to worry about that competition anymore. Really, the only competition that still exists for PSA, the only really real competition, is CGC. The next after that's like Tag and some of these other sort of smaller entities. I think like Arena Design does some grading, and then there's some other entities that have like small little shops. And maybe those entities that have some good backing can now step up and say, okay, let's see if we can come to the table here. But most of us historically over the last several years have said there's 4 real grading companies, and PSA now owns 3 of the 4 of them, right? And the 4th is CGC, and that's it. So now you basically have 2 players. You have PSA and you have CGC. And you might say, but wait a second, Adam, you're getting ahead of yourself here. You're moving too fast, because PSA has said that they have respect for the BGS brand, and that it will continue. And I haven't, we could go look up the exact quote. I'm going to let you guys do that on your own so that we don't waste time here. But that really leads us to the last question, which is, what do I think will happen now? And my answer, despite the messaging or the optics of what PSA would like us to think, I think the answer is probably that in most ways they'll do the same thing that they did with SGC. Because again, why do you go spend tens of millions of dollars on an entity if you're PSA, if they're if you're acquiring your competition? In general, there's no real reason to like buy that asset to then like make that asset amazing. What there is a reason to buy that asset to get the assets from that company. And then the other great benefit, and the main great benefit, is you kill the company. You sunset the company. You remove all potential competition going forward. The message and the optics to Beckett here, or to PSA here, are unquestionably really important because of what happened historically with SGC. SGC and that purchase, there was some negative that came from that. And there will be negative that comes from us, from this. But PSA doesn't really care about those of us that are like guys like me, or those of you who are like content creators who are putting out some things where a few thousand people are going to watch it. How many people are going to watch this video? Like 1,000 people, maybe? Like nobody's going to watch this video. And because nobody's going to watch this video, and nobody's going to watch most of the videos that are out there, compared to, even if it's like a couple thousand people, nobody's going to really care about, like PSA is not going to really care about that group compared to the millions of people, like the millions of cards that are being graded every month. Like, is it going to really impact that? Not really. They're thinking about what really matters to them. And that's what businesses ought to do. That's what businesses with shareholders and future shareholders ought to do. Their job is to look at the whole of the the profitability of the company and think about that in the long term. And I think maybe I'm wrong. I'm wrong about a lot of things, but I don't think I'm going to be wrong about this. I think their job is basically to sunset Beckett the same way they did with SGC, but to do it in a way that feels better to those people who care. And again, do I care? No, I don't care. I don't care at all, because Beckett died a long time ago. Beckett has not done anything meaningful to me and how I think about the hobby in several years. Beckett was passed by. And so historically speaking, is it a huge deal? It is a huge deal. But does it impact you and your hobby? Probably not. It sure doesn't for me. All right, guys. Hope that helps. 20 minutes longer than I meant to. Hope you guys have a great day. Happy collecting.